students, welcome back to the lecture part number 2 or second part of the lecture 31. We have been discussing about the different length scale issues as well as the calculations required for obtaining data. So, in the last part or the first part of the lecture rather, we talked about CalFAT. I showed you what different kinds of mathematical formalism as well as plots, right, for both bulk scale as well as nanoscale systems. Now, you can also use CalFAT provides you phases and their quantities in the microstructure, but it does not provide you real microstructure, how these phases are distributed, how they look like, what are their sizes, shapes, morphologies, it does not provide, because it is a thermodynamic calculations. Secondly, it also provides you mostly the microstructure or the stable phases, thermodynamically stable phases. It is not easy to obtain the microstructure phase diagrams of the metastable phases. Well, it is possible to do nowadays, but not easy. So, nonetheless, it only provides different phases and their amounts of volume percentage or volume fractions, whatever you can say. It does not provide you how the phases will look like, how they will be distributed, and also it does not provide also the phases in a microstructure where there are a lot of strain energy effects. And you can also have issues of transformations. So, in a nutshell, we can get this information using phase field simulations. That is what we will discuss in this part of the lecture. So, as you know, we have to connect thermodynamics to kinetics to the microstructure. That is the key things in getting that. Again, this particular slide is obtained from PanDat and Thermocal both. That is what you see these two features. Okay. The picture of a panda tells you PanDat, and picture of this kind of ternary things called is taken from CalFAT. So, we can actually get the kinetic parameters like diffusivities, atomistic or whatever calculations. Once you get that, we can calculate the mobility databases that can be used for Dichter diffusion field calculations, and we can also use experimental data and optimize. Once you optimize that, you can get a much better understanding of how the rate of transformation can happen. Okay, like here the chemical diffusivities of titanium in a alloy is shown, but this is okay, nice, but does not provide you the microstructure of the titanium alloy. As you know, the microstructure will be controlled by many things, not only diffusivities, mobilities, Phi energies, but also strain energies. When these kind of phases are present, you can see here in this picture, which is a basket weave microstructure we call in titanium alloys. So, you can have strain energies playing a very important role between the phases. So, let us talk about phase field simulations. What is the main idea? Well, main idea is to solve a single set of partial differential equations over the entire domain. So, before that, let me tell you that let us imagine the growth of precipitates in aluminum copper alloy, and these precipitates are growing in a matrix, right, as you have seen. Let us talk about this picture which I have shown you. Yes, precipitates, yeah, this is the picture you see, precipitates are going in a matrix. So, these are the precipitates which are shown here, these ones, and this blue color thing is called matrix. So, if that is the case, we are thinking about it. So, there are three distinct quantities to consider. One is the precipitate obviously, second is the matrix on which they are forming, and third is the precipitates matrix interface. These three has to be considered. So, if I draw it here again, that picture, let me explain to you. So, this is a microstructure, these are the precipitates. Okay. So, this is the matrix. So, we have three pieces here, matrix, precipitate, and you have an interface between precipitates and matrix. That is the interface. That constitute our system, which is I have drawn it here. So, there are these three distinct quantities. The interfaces can be described in different ways, like this actually evolving surfaces whose motion is controlled according to the boundary conditions exist. The precipitates can grow, then this motion will happen, or the boundaries will also move. So, that is what is the thing which allows you to develop the microstructure. Initially precipitates may start forming as small particles, then they grow and become bigger. We are talking about that, because phase speed simulation allows you to understand how the microstructure actually evolve as a function of time, as a function of temperature, as a function of chemistry, all kinds of things. That is what. So, that is why the interface in this kind of systems require a mathematical descriptions. CALPHAT provides you free energy descriptions of the matrix and the precipitates. There are two different phases. We can always obtain free energies or G of precipitate and the matrix, right, but it does not provide you the information about the interface. Okay. Well, you may say it is provide, but when the interface moves, it does not provide much information about that. So, we need to do that. So, phase speed model, there are two main issues are used. One is the bulk thermodynamics, which you already discussed in CALPHAT. Like here you have a system, I have shown you my phase diagram FCC L1 to FCC L1 to phases. So, it will give you free energy functions for each of these phases. But as you told, like in the last slide about the precipitate matrix microstructure, you have an interface between a precipitate and the matrix. So, therefore, there is an interface that requires you to know surface properties also. So, in a phase speed model, these two are dealt together, but they are two separate issues, separate quantities. But we have to develop, we have to solve a single PDE over the entire domain. That is the main idea of this phase field. How do you do that? So, phase field incorporates both the bulk thermodynamics of the multi-phase systems. Just now I talk about precipitates and the matrix, as well as also it provides the information of the surface thermodynamics. Sometimes people call it Gibbs surface excess quantities. They are nothing but a surface properties. That is what they do. So, now how do you characterize the interface? We will talk about these equations now. So, in the phase field model, the state of the entire microstructure is represented by continuously varying one single variable. The state of the whole, because we have to develop one single PD, partial differential equation, and you have free energy of the phases and surface energy of the interfaces. So, what do you do? You cannot have different sets of equation, then you have problem of tracking the interface. So, what you do is that we define a single variable by interface represented by single variable, or rather do not interpret, the entire microstructure is represented by single variable. That variable is always called as a phi, and as you see here, this is 1, this is 0. So, there are two phases here, one phase is more denser atomically than other phase. So, we have seen that this phi is 1 for the less dense phase, 0 for the more dense phase, and the interface the phi varies from 1 to 0. So, phi is called order parameter or indicator function. I hope you got it. And this phi is, as I told you, phi is 1 and 0. So, therefore, phi between 0 and 1, 0, phi 1, it indicates the interface, or but that is why it is changing, right, the values are changing. For the less dense phase is 1, more dense phase is 0, close to 0. In this regime, interface is diffuse, and we call this is the width of the interface, as you can see here, width of the interface. So, this interface is kind of defined by the change of phi in this regime 0 to 1. I hope it is clear. The range for which it changes, this is the width of the interface. And remember, this interface is diffuse, it is not sharp, right. If it is sharp interface, then it will have a jump. Sharp interface will look like this, correct, but here we are showing the interface in a different fashion. So, this is this kind of interface. So, there is a finite width, correct. This finite width is defined the diffuse interface. So, this is the main aspect, and this variable is phi is called a phase field variable, order parameter or phase field. This is what it is called. Now, how do you understand the evolution of microstructure? So, let us go back to the board, we will come back to this equation little later. So, evolution of microstructure. So, this is basically, it has two parts. Okay. One is the thermodynamical description, of phases, okay, and second one is surface properties or interface properties. Okay, these two are the things. So, this is defined by the free energies. This is defined by the surface energies as well as width of that. So, let me draw a microstructure again. So, you have precipitates, in a matrix. So, these are precipitates, this is this is matrix, and there is the interface. I write E I between the phases. That is why we need a surface or interface, surface properties of that interface. Well, that is, but now the question is, how do we define the interface? That is what we are trying to do. We basically we want to develop a single equation. So, we define interface by this way. So, we see the value, how this how this variable phi is varying. So, you can see that where this is 0 and 1. So, phi is varying, this is the width of the interface, right, that is what it is. Width of the interface. Okay. So, we can define that interface by this width, also define the interface by the value of the phi. So, phi is 1 for one phase and phi is 0 for another phase, phase 1, phase 2, and phi varies from 0 to 1 for interface. Now, it is very easy to simulate the microstructure evolution, because we need to formulate an equation how phi is vary as a function of time. So, what you do? We write this equation, or basically like that, the what is that evolution of microstructure. Evolution of microstructure will be given by this equation, del phi by del t equal to m del g by del phi. So, this is the first term here, this term is telling you variation of phi or phase field variable. So, phi is what? Phi is your phase field variable, right. So, this is the variation of phi with time. This one is called mobility related to diffusivity. This is relative diffusivity. Okay. And then what is G? G is nothing but free energy functional. G describes how free energy will change or free energy varies as a function of phase field variable or phi. Okay. So, this is your master equation which you need to solve. I told you, right, we need to have one single PDE, partial differential equation. This is T, by the way, do not get confused. One partial equation which will provide you everything. That is what it will give you evolution of microstructure as a function of time. Well, now G has to be written, right. So, G, as you know, has two parts. G has two parts. One is G is from these phases, precipitation matrix, other one is the interface, right. So, you can always write down G for the whole volume V. So, first term is your G0 phi time temperature plus a constant epsilon into grad phi square. Let me explain. So, this is the total free energy which is integrated over the whole volume, correct. That is what it is called, it is integrated over the whole volume. So, here T is temperature, V is volume and phi is your phase field variable, right. So, G0 for solidification, let us take, can be written as H into Gs plus 1 minus H into Gl plus Q into F. So, H is the fraction of solid multiplied by the free energy of solid, solidification, when liquid solid you are talking about it, not precipitates. And then this 1 minus H is the fraction of liquid multiple plus a function Q into F. Okay. That is what can be written, and this Q is F, basically Q is the height of the activation and barrier at the interface. Q is the activation and barrier. So, we can write down for the precipitates as like this, H into this matrix and QF. Okay. So, this is the volume fraction of the precipitates multiplied by free energy precipitates plus volume fraction of the matrix multiplied by the free energy of the matrix plus QF, and Q is basically the barrier height of the interface. What does it mean? It means how strong the interface is, because interface will grow, right. The precipitates will become bigger and bigger, then interface will become grow. That is what. So, barrier height is very important, right, then as precipitates become bigger and thicker and thicker. So, now this function H can be, this one H can be also written as a function of phi or F also can be written okay. So, as you can see, everything you can get down in terms of the phi, the phase field variables, everything here you can get down. G is this. So, we should know the free energy of the precipitate and we should know free energy of the matrix, that is okay, that can be obtained from Calford, and Q is the barrier height, that also can be obtained from diffusional calculations, and H and F can be obtained like this. Okay. I will talk about why you are using this kind of functions. So, finally, we can find out G as a function of phi. So, now we can take the first derivative, partial derivative with respect to phi, and then we can solve this mathematical partial differential equations. So, this is the main theme of phase field evolution. So, we track how phi varies as a function of time. So, you can see here free energy is given this, again same thing, this is this, here is k is corresponding to epsilon there I told you, and this phi square is basically related to the phase energy or interface energy, and this is the free energy functions. Okay. Now, why we take such a kind of free energy functions like H and F is shown in the board. That is because taking the corollary of liquid and solids, because we want to have two minima each for liquid and solid, and this functions tells you that. Okay. You can clearly see H as a minima at 3/2 and F as a minima as phi equal to 1, and both as a minima as phi equal to 0, right. Both the function goes to 0 when phi is 0, and H goes to also 0 when phi becomes 3/2, F goes to 0 when phi becomes 1, right. So, that is why you need this kind of double well potentials. The double well potential helps you to do that. Okay. So, total free energy is kind of it's a functional, that is why it is called free energy functional. G is considered as a free energy functional there, and that is why G is to be written like that. So, in a nutshell, if I have to write the final equation for this, okay, final equation for this G del phi by del t. So, del phi by del t will look like this, that is equal to m mobility multiplied by epsilon phi square, epsilon sorry not phi, grad phi square. Grad phi tells you the interfacial energy, epsilon is a constant to be multiplied to take care of that, then H L sorry H G L minus G S, or rather G matrix minus G precipitate minus Q F. So, that will be the final equation if I have to do mathematics properly, and this is what you are going to solve. So, something is shown here also, you can see here on the right side they have taken m out, m 1 by m del phi by del t, and this is just the surface energy terms, okay, capillary terms, and this is what is your free energy terms. This is called Kahn-Allen equations in the way. So, let us not talk about much of these too much in details. So, we can always define free energy function like this also, epsilon square del phi the square, the gradient phi square, and sometimes people take half also, that is okay, but finally you are solving this fundamental equation. So, let us come back to some of the examples of that. I will not go back into all these equations, they will talk many more physics into that, but that will make your life more difficult. So, once you solve the equations, one of these are shown here. So, you can get different kinds of microstructures. Let us talk about that. So, phase field simulations on the growth of dendrites, very important. So, as you see here, once you solve that, this is taken from NIST, okay, National Institute of Science and Technology US. This is showing nicely grown dendrites. Not only that, you can one can see even the secondary arm, then the dendrite side arms are breathing. Can you see that? They are breathing, they are forming breaths, right? Here also they are breathing, correct? That can also be tracked. Very easy, because it is basically solid and liquid for dendritic growth. So, it will be GL and GS instead of GP and G matrix or GM. So, equations will remain same. So, one can easily track how the dendrites grows into the liquid. Here it is showing even how actually one single dendrite is showing. You can see that actually one can easily get this kind of shapes and dendrites. This is taken from Mallis and Rossum, Mallis et al. Basically, and from the University of Leeds, and you can see that dendrites are growing typically in the liquid, and the concentration profile across the liquid from the solid to liquid can be also tracked or can be seen that. So, this is a liquid composition, this is a solid composition, and around that solid there is a segregation of these solids or the ejection of the solid, that is why they are segregated and slowly decreases. One can also look at the dendrites, morphology of dendrites much better way also. This is what is shown again here. You can see that how the dendrites started growing from initially as a spherical nucleus, then the spherical nucleus get broken down, and finally 4 pieces starts forming from the central. You can also do phase space simulation of eutectics. This is taken from our eutectic grows like 2 phase microstructures. You can see there that one is white, other one is gray. So, we can start with liquid and 2 phases, and then you can see that how the 2 phases will start developing for the different conditions C1 and C2. And one can not only do it, one can also look at if you have a seed crystal, one phase, the other phase will form. Okay, you can see that other phase is forming and other phase is going on the top of the second phase. Okay, that is also possible. The red color phase was growing, it grows, and finally the second phase started forming. So, it is also shown here in this picture. You can see that the 2 phases, they are directly going to the liquid, and they are finally becomes a full scale microstructure of that. So, this is very clear aspects of that we can do. So, now I would also like to give you one informations. The lecture number 32 and 33 will be delivered by a guest faculty, Professor Tarun Kumar Kundu. He is from IIT Kharagpur. He is from the Department of Metallurgical Materials Engineering, and this is his details. His email address is written here. See, he will be taking 2 lectures, DFT for lecture number 32, and MC and MD, molecular dynamics and multicolor simulations will be taught in lecture number 33. So, therefore, for this part of the lecture, as I told you, for these materials at different length scale, there are 5 lectures. So, I spent 3 lectures describing about different length scale issues, phase diagram, Calford, as well as I talked about today phase field simulations, by a very brief way. I understand phase field simulation itself will be one course, but I did not want to talk about it. Now, if you want to go down from the microstructure to the atomic level or even the electrons, then you need to talk about density functional theories, molecular dynamics, multicolor simulations. That is what will be dealt by Professor Tarun Kumar Kundu. He will be delivering these lectures for subsequent 2 lectures, and I hope you will be getting same flavor or better flavor than what I am providing in different lectures. So, let me stop here for this lecture number 31, and I will come back for lecture number 34, okay, where we will talk about the advanced deep learning techniques. Thank you.